Welcome to the second series of Arthritis Below the Belt. This session, presented in collaboration between Arthritis SA and the Continence Foundation, is about diet for down below and was developed and presented by Denise O'Connell, arthritis educator, registered and practicing dietitian.
Alright, so I'm going to talk about nutrition for your bowel and bladder issues that are related to arthritis. So this is a lovely picture of our digestive system. If you ever did biology at school, I'm hoping that you've seen this before. So arthritis conditions can affect all of our digestive system, particularly those that have any kind of smooth muscle problems, much like this picture in mind. Sorry, I can't have it up at the same time, but I'm going to talk about some of those symptoms. But I'm going to go through some of the upper digestive system symptoms. So these are things like dry mouth, swallowing problems. Now, if you think about the jaw, we've got lots of joints in the jaw. If you've got any arthritis, just more of that physical osteoarthritis in the jaw, it can be hard to masticate your food, so it's hard to chew your food. Also with that dry mouth, your salivary glands maybe aren't working so well. Swallowing, so the peristalsis, which is the process of moving food down the gullet. So right from the start, if you don't chew your food right, I don't remember what the number is, but if you chew your food 40 something times, I know my grandma used to tell me this, if you're not chewing that food properly, you're getting undigested food into the stomach. That can sometimes cause heartburn, but if you've already got heartburn, you're probably taking Nexium, which is a proton pump inhibitor, and that reduces the acid in the stomach. So then there's this undigested food going through all the way to the end in our digestive system. So that can have issues with smooth muscle damage, if you've already got that as a part of your condition, but also malabsorption, so nutrient malabsorption, which is also already a part of a lot of these conditions that we work with. So in that lower part of the digestive system, if we start from the top and you don't eat your food, if you don't chew your food well, and we've got this undigested food happening, and this is just in a healthy individual, if you've got a lot of different conditions going on as well, then this poorly digested food, let's call it, can cause constipation and diarrhea, let alone the fact that some of these arthritis conditions can cause constipation and diarrhea as well. So I'm not sure if you understand what I mean by incomplete evacuation. I hope that it's self-explanatory. We also have urgency and incontinence, both of bladder and bowel. All these very common symptoms that can occur because of normal everyday things, aging and what have you, but more so when you've got combinations of, say, arthritic conditions or other conditions. So one of the first things I wanted to say was specialist dietary advice with a dietitian, a qualified dietitian, is needed if there's more complex conditions at play. So we want to rule out things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, and just in general food sensitivities. All of these things can play a role in what's going on with our digestive system, but also there is an overlap with some of these conditions and people suffering from arthritis. So it's always worth ruling them out first before you try and go down. And sometimes you have a bit of an inkling that something else is going on, or the doctor can't quite figure it out. Sometimes it's worth having an investigation with a dietitian. So I'm going to talk about fibre for bowel health. So we'll talk through our fruits and veggies and herbs and spices, and we'll look at dietary bladder habits as well. So only 8% of Australians eat enough veggies. So that's 92% chance that you're not eating enough veggies, and at least 1 in 10 people are eating enough. So in this room, that would make maybe 2 people who eat enough veggies. And that's just the base recommendation. What we try and advocate for bowel health is a high fibre diet. So fruits and veggies are our number one source of fibre. So including more fruits and veggies in your diet can only be a good thing. So our basic recommendations are 5 and 2. I'm sure you've seen that campaign before, but it's a minimum. So you can absolutely, and I encourage you, to eat more than 5 serves of veggies a day. Sometimes it can be hard. And fruit as well. We want to go more than 2. So when we're looking at fruits and veggies as far as their nutrition go, they're also our powerhouse. Their powerhouse is full of, we've got plant proteins and antioxidants, vitamins and minerals. Also our polyphenols, which are our micronutrients. We don't know enough about the micronutrients, so we just know that they're preventative for disease and really health promoting. And fibre in and of itself is really important for gut health, so gut for our little microbes, so it's a prebiotic. So a prebiotic is what our gut bacteria use as their food, and a probiotic is the actual gut bacteria. So if you take a probiotic as far as a tablet goes, that is the little microbe, whereas those microbes need some healthy things to eat. So that's our prebiotics. That's what our fruits and veggies and our starches are really full of. I'll talk about that a bit more as well. So herbs and spices are full of anti-inflammatory properties. So you might have heard of curcumin. There's a lot of research recently about curcumin, and it's all about turmeric. But of course, if you want to get it from a natural source and you try and take turmeric can be really horrible to have as a drink or what have you. So just adding, so curcumin is in turmeric, but it's also in cumin and ginger as well. So curry, curries come to mind with those 3 ingredients. But including these herbs into your everyday or, into your diet can only be of benefit. So parsley, rosemary and basil are really high in anti-inflammatory properties. So these are really health promoting kind of properties. And it doesn't matter if it's fresh or it's dried, so long as, now someone was telling me the use by date, you don't want to get anywhere near the use by date of herbs. They tend to not have any flavour by then anyway. So just keep an eye on your use by dates of those herbs, check the pantry, but ultimately they're going to. Okay, so this is where it's all at, is fibre for bowel health. So we used to just have the 2 fibres, and in truth, soluble and insoluble fibre are true fibres. Starch is not a fibre, but starch acts very much like fibre and is that prebiotic. So it's that food for our gut microbe. So we talk here about a minimum of 30 grams a day. I'll show you a little bit later what that actually looks like. So our soluble fibre, it slows the carbohydrate breakdown. So if you've ever heard of the GI index, it really, adding some of that soluble fibre really slows the GI of your food. It's also fermentable by the colon. So this is another prebiotic, the soluble fibre. So soluble fibre is found in the plant cells, so inside of the cell, inside of that plant cell. And that's things like legumes and oats and barley, things like fruit and veg flesh. So when we're talking about insoluble fibre, it's the plant wall, so it's outside of the cell, and it's that bulking agent. It helps everything just the peristalsis, so the movement, a natural movement of our bowel from the top to the bottom. That movement is helped when it's got something to push against. So that's where we want to bulk our stools, and this is where insoluble fibre is that lovely bulking agent. Not much of the insoluble fibre is fermented though, so it's not really good food for our bacteria, but really helps to hold everything in shape. Now that's things like wheat bran and rice, so brown rice. I must admit it's brown rice because it's got the outside of the rice hull, wholemeal breads and whole grain cereal type products. So we've also got starch. Like I said, it's the food for the gut bacteria. And our resistant starch is legumes, unripe bananas. I don't particularly enjoy eating green bananas, but if that's your thing. We've also got cooked and cooled food. So think of like pasta salads or potato salads where you cook you cook the starchy either potatoes or pasta, rice, whole grains, and then you cool them quickly. So those kind of hot to cold quickly increases the amount of starch in that product. So cold potato salad all the way. Perhaps not all of it. I know how tasty it is. Really, really great for feeding those good bacteria. And of course, I bang on about this a bit, drinking more water. If you're going to increase your fibre, you need to increase the water, because like Jude was saying, that dehydration is really crucial. Not being dehydrated, making sure you're hydrated is really crucial in allowing everything to move through the system really smoothly. I've chucked this in. It doesn't really fit, the healthy fats, but it's really important for skin integrity. And when we think about our skin, it's outside of our body, but it continues all the way on the inside. So you can consider that the surface of the inside of your GI tract, you can consider that skin as well. The healthy fats really help make sure that the skin integrity is healthy. So we've kind of stepped away from this low-fat era and very much are looking at healthy fats. So the biggest take-home message with any kind of healthy fat intake is making sure that your omega-3s are more than your omega-6. So that is really easy to do if you take processed foods out or reduce your processed foods. Most of our omega-6s are in our processed foods. It's basically cooked oil. So any oil or any fats that have been cooked is what we want to stay away from. So basically you're eating more of those healthy fats like nuts and seeds, avocado, olive oil, oily fish, and less of that saturated and trans fats, which, as we know, is in cakes, like commercial cakes and biscuits. Don't worry, your home cooked bickies are fine, because we cannot get our ovens to the temperature that a commercial kitchen does. So it's not necessarily, so I've got butter, cream, lard and fatty meats, and it's not necessarily not having these foods, it's just not having a lot of them. So back to our fibre. So in your little bag today, you've got this lovely book from the Continence Foundation. And these tips are from this book. So we're looking at 5 to 6 serves of veggies a day, 2 serves of fruit, looking at those whole meal or whole grain choices, and adding beans and nuts and seeds into what you're already having. A high fibre day. So this is around 30 to 35 grams of fibre for the day. I'm pretty sure I put some recipes in your books too, so you'll have the recipes of what these look like.
Is that the ideal amount per day?
It's a minimum. We want to go for a minimum. Well, it says 25, the recommendations are 25 to 30. I say 30 is a minimum for good health. And to be fair, we probably, if you're not, let's have a look at this. And so we've got porridge topped with berries. So the fibre is in the porridge, in the whole grain, and the berries. We've got almonds and a plum, so any kind of nuts or seeds with a fruit. Again, we've got the fibre in the almonds and the plum. The southwestern salad is just a veggie-based salad. Again, lots of veggies. Hummus and vegetable sticks, pretty self-explanatory, and salmon, Brussels sprouts and quinoa. So quinoa is a type of grain. Now, this is making sure that there's a type of food in every meal that has lots of fibre in it. So, say for instance you had a cereal for breakfast, like cornflakes or rice bubbles. They tend to be adding fibre into, say, cornflakes, but they're a really highly processed food. They're not going to have as much of the fibre that we're looking for. What would be an example of morning tea? So morning tea might be a cake or a biscuit. Again, still carbs, still some fibre, but not as much nutrition in there either. So you can kind of see how we don't get enough fibre, and it's mainly the veggies. So I try and concentrate on getting enough veggies into the diet, because it's the veggies that have so much of what we're looking for here. So the fibre, got some more visual things here that we can have a look at what it actually looks like. So when we're thinking about adding more veggies, I always bring it back to adding more veggies. I don't know a dietitian or a nutritionist who wouldn't. So, on a plate, so this might be your lunch plate or your dinner plate, or it could be your breakfast plate. But basically, half of that plate is veggies. Now, when we think about a plate as well, we want to consider portion size, of course. When we put our palm out, if you were to put your palm out on your plate and imagine a circle around your palm, that's where the food goes for you. So in proportion. If you've got big hands, then yeah, more for you. And then, so half of you can get a bit of a visual, because now our plates are a lot bigger than what they used to be. A 1950s size plate to a 2018 size plate is vastly different. So if we keep it in proportion to us, then that's the concentration of food is on that part of the plate. Half of that plate is veggies. A quarter is protein. So that would be, say, if we're thinking red meat, it would be the size of your palm, size and thickness of your palm. And the fruit, see on the quarter here, that's our carbs. So this particular example, it's got, I think it's like a couscous with sultanas in it. So that's where our fruit and our whole grains are. That is the size of your fist. So it's very much in proportion to you. But that veggies, making the veggies the stellar part, making that more. Some examples of adding more of those veggies in, you're adding all of the goodness in by, say, this is a ham and cheese sandwich. You can just add a little bit of salad in there. It does end up being a bit bigger than what we can perhaps get our mouth around, the looks of that one. And an example of, say, a pasta dish, a spaghetti bolognese, I believe this one is. That's very typical. Huge amount of pasta, lots and lots of meat, not so many veggies. So with this one, all it's done is added a side salad. So you don't even necessarily have to add the veggies to the dish. If there's something that you really love and a recipe you don't want to tamper with by adding veggies to it, always add a side salad. It just, once you start to get used to having a side salad, it tends to be something that you go for. All right, so it's all well and good to add your veggies in, but if you're having trouble chewing your food, you've got dry mouth, or there's any real issues with appetite, fatigue, things like that, then getting enough fibre is still possible. And maybe having the cooler months coming along, maybe not today as an example, but having a slow cooker really helps to keep food moist. So you can put lots of veggies in. You're not going to lose a lot of nutrition by having a slow cooker. You can add a side salad if you're worried about that kind of thing. Adding gravies or sauces to your meals, perhaps go for the lower sodium options or make them yourself. Savoury baking, so things like savoury muffins, and putting lots of veg in. You can use a lot of fruit as well to keep muffins moist. Just by adding that fruit or veg into the muffin gives you another serve. And smoothies. Sometimes when we're thinking about chewing our food, a smoothie is one way that it's already done for you. You don't even, you don't have to think about it. It's already masticated for you. And you can add all sorts of things into smoothies. You can add lots of veggies. Sometimes people need to add a bit more fruit to veggie to start with, but slowly, as your taste buds get used to having a bit more veg, because veg tends to be a bit bitter, then you can even out those proportions and having smoothies with a bit more veg than fruit. And of course, porridges and puddings, things like chia puddings. I'm sure you've heard of chia by now, but it's a seed actually that is very similar to sago. So it's that moist, provides a lot of healthy fats, the chia actually. All right, so Jude really covered this part well. And it's the dietary bladder habits. So all I can comment on is your dietary, like your intake of fluids here. So Jude talked about not drinking enough water, which then can create that irritation. Drinking too much too fast can also overwhelm the bladder. But that just in case, I won't drink just in case I can't get to a toilet, I can't hold it, etc., etc. So all of these things are related to fluid And it's important to make sure that you've got enough fluids in your systems for your body to work optimally and to be able to flush out any inflammation components that are occurring because of your arthritis. So it's really important. We want our kidneys to be flushing all of our toxins out. We need water to be able to help our liver do its job of getting rid of those toxins. So how much water do we drink? I'll talk about bladder irritants in a minute as well, because you can have your fluid and your water intake just spot on, but there's certain foods that can irritate the bladder. So how much water? So it's how long is a piece of string? If you're a smaller person, perhaps more of a 1.5 litres. If you're a bigger person, maybe more towards the 2 litres a day. So that's 6 to 8 glasses of water in a day. It does also include other fluids, so milk, soup, jelly, ice cream, high water content foods like watermelon and cucumber. Lettuce tends to be a high water food as well. So drinking your fluids evenly throughout the day rather than having big chunks, just sipping throughout the day can sometimes really help to manage bladder issues. And I often get asked about tea and coffee. So normally tea and coffee is absolutely considered in your fluid intake. But of course, tea and coffee is the very first thing of the bladder irritants list. So the way to get this doesn't mean that you'll never have these things again, but sometimes it's worth reducing or eliminating some of these to see if that's affecting you with your bladder issues. So with the certain acidic foods, that tends to be oranges, grapefruits, lemons and limes, so those citrus type foods. Spicy foods, some of them are really self-explanatory, and it's not necessarily, it's just the food, it's the component, there's some components of those foods that can cause irritation. And you can imagine if you're then perhaps cutting back your fluid to help you manage your bladder, then you've also got irritants making things worse. And that brings